King visits the land office to buy a piece of land from the company. Upon arrival, King inquires the office regarding the purchase of the land owned by the company. The officer inspects information of the land but tells her that the land was owned by HEE and not the company. With the information, King leaves the office defeated. An officer then calls Mr. Hee and informs him about the issue. Hee nods in acknowledgement of the information and decides to sue King for misuse of asset. Miss King, who was sitting at her office desk, idly jumped in shock at the slam of documents by Mr. Hee. Mr. Hee tells Miss King about the call and accuses Miss King for the misuse of the property, leading to a conclusion of suing Miss King.
See you in court.
Unbeknown to Miss King, this was an act by Mr. Hee to gain money from the case.
Under Section 114F of the Evidence Act 1950, the court presumes that the common course of business in the company had been followed according to the particular transaction.
The case was appealed and brought to the Supreme Court.
Court is adjourned.
Welcome to the courtroom. This case concerns a property ownership dispute between Hee Soo-king and Hee Tin Lee. The property jointly owned by the parties was purchased in 2003 for $250,000. The plaintiff, Mr. Tin Hee, claims he made the majority financial contribution to its purchase, while the defendant, Ms. Soo-king, argues that her non-financial contributions, such as upkeep and maintenance, justify equal ownership.
Good morning. We are here to determine the rightful ownership proportions of the property. Let us hear from the plaintiff. Counsel, you may begin.
Your Honor, the facts are clear. The property was purchased for $250,000, with my client contributing $150,000 or 60% of the purchase price. Furthermore, Mr. Ying made consistent payment toward the mortgage for the first 10 years. My client trusted Mr. Tin Hee, believing they were aligned in their financial responsibility. However, the defendant has not provided evidence of significant financial contributions.
Ms. Ying, can you confirm the extent of your financial contributions to the property?
Yes, Your Honor. I paid the deposit of $50,000 and contributed an additional $100,000 to the mortgage payments over the years. I believe that was a joint effort, but Mr. Hee has now denied his obligations.
Your Honor, we are seeking a division of the property based on equitable contributions. Mr. Ying has clearly provided the majority of the financial resources and is entitled to a greater share of ownership.
Your Honor, while it's true that Mr. Ying contributed more financially, property ownership is not only determined solely by monetary input. My client, Mr. Tin Hee, has made significant contribution in order to maintain and to improve the property over the years. For instance, Mr. Tin Hee has spent over $50,000 in terms of renovation and personally to oversaw multiple repairs, including a kitchen remodel and a rooftop replacement. His contribution has substantially increased the property value.
Your Honor, I handled the property's upkeep and paid the utility bills, minor repairs throughout the joint ownership. My efforts ensure that the property's condition and the livability.
Counsel, how do you argue that this impacts ownership proportions? Your Honor, this contribution do not be a direct financial payments toward the mortgage, but it should equally weigh in determining the ownership of the property. We argue for an equal 50-50 division of the property.
Mr. Tin Hee, can you provide evidence of these renovation expenses of your labor's monetary value?
I have received for some expenses, but I did not document everything. I relied on the verbal agreement.
Your Honor, this highlights the lack of substantial evidence for Mr. Tin Hee's claim. Equity requires proportional ownership, and Mr. Ying's clear financial contribution outweighed Mr. Tin Hee's claim of non-monetary input.
Therefore, I ask for your Honor's fair judgment.
Having heard both sides, this court acknowledges the following. Ms. Hugh Ying has provided clear evidence of her financial contributions covering 60% of the property's purchase price and subsequent mortgage payments. Secondly,
HEW has provided some evidence of non-monetary contributions such as renovations and maintenance, but these are not quantified to match Ms. HEW's financial investments. The principle of equitable ownership dictates that contributions, both financials and otherwise, should determine ownership shares. However, in this case, Ms. Sook Ying's financial contributions override the contribution of Mr. Tin Hee due to the lack of evidence submitted to the court.
So from the evidence gathered, the court rules that the property shall be divided into the following proportions. Ms. Hugh Sook Ying, 60%, and Mr. Hugh Tin Hee, 40%.
The ruling for the case of Hugh Sook Ying versus Hugh Tin Hee, Section 20 of the Companies Act 1965 states that no conveyance or transfer of property, whether real or personal, to or by a company, shall be invalid by reason only of the fact that the company was without capacity or power to do the act or to execute or take the conveyance as transfers. Following this, the respondent's caveat under Section 323 of the National Land Code 1965, where he expresses his purpose of protecting his personal interest, is ignored by the court, as the respondent should have filed a claim or filed the claim within reasonable time for education, which he had no intention of doing so. The court, under Section 114F of the Evidence Act 1950, is entitled to presume that the common course of business in the company had been followed according to the particular transaction. Therefore, in this case, the company, a registered proprietor of the land, had sold the property to the appellant, Ms. Hugh Sook Ying, along with the instrument of transfer and the document of title for registration. For this case, this court is in favor of Mrs. Hugh Sook Ying.
Court is adjourned.
The case sets a precedent in disputes over joint property ownership, emphasizing the importance of proportional contribution in determining equity. With reference to Salomon versus Salomon case, a company's property is a separate entity from the members of the company, hence the defendant's act is unsupported as he is applying his personal interest towards the company's property. In addition, a company does not have a fiduciary duty to challenge its conduct by lodging a private caveat for the purpose of protecting its own interest or the interest of the shareholders if the company has executed the instrument of transfer in Form 14A in favor of the purchaser and has delivered the original document of title.